Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your patience. Welcome to the March 3rd, 2021 Select Board meeting. Pursuant to all the laws and regulations that have been changed, we are meeting via Zoom still, trying to stay safe. Couple of things. This is being broadcast via WACA via live stream. It is not on the cable station today, and it is also being recorded. So just be aware of that. It's being recorded via Zoom. We will start with citizens participation. Either use the raise the hand feature in the chat or raise your hand like Mark DeSoni is doing. Mark, go ahead, unmute yourself. And how are you this evening?
All right, so far, thank you, Mark DeSoni, 49 Hawthorne Road. I hope everybody's well. And I want to show something I just got in the mail today, which hopefully is a promise, but I will make a phone call. This letter, I've been trying to tell her.
Mark, make sure you don't share any personal information that someone could grab.
It won't be
Okay.
personal. It won't be personal. It's from Mass Health.
Okay.
I will try to call the number to make an appointment for me and my dad to get a vaccine.
Nice.
That came in the mail thing. I'll start doing that tomorrow, and I got instructions to do that.
Good.
And hopefully the rest of the town can follow up and hopefully get the vaccine. And I'm going forth, being good. My dad's well, getting a little bit better. And it's good to see Mr. Mignani back.
Yeah, thank you. Nice to be back, Mark. Thank you.
We are glad to have him back as well.
The Italian stallion is now back in the saddle. Huh?
No comment.
And that would be my comment right there. Have a good night.
Thank you, Mark.
Madam Chair, can I just comment on what Mark said about, I know we're going to talk about COVID locations and get the flu shots.
Yep, real quick.
CVS Pharmacy in Medfield has opened up and is giving shots to the public. You just have to call their number and get on their list. So far,
is it anybody?
Yeah.
It's not just
I'm
65
going Friday.
and older.
I actually got registered for Friday.
Yeah, but isn't it still just 65 and older?
No, actually, they've opened up because of Biden's mandate.
Right.
Teachers to be vaccinated. CVS
okay.
is opening up to teachers as well.
Yeah.
Okay, but general public, not.
General
Teachers
would be still the same 65 and over, 75 and over, and so on.
But with respect to Gus DeSoni, I mean, he's a tad a little older than I am, so I'm sure that CVS will definitely take him. And when you're his caretaker, Mark, I'm sure that could fall into play as well.
Yeah.
We're going to try to go for homebound because of his health and his insight, the way he is.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Good luck with that, Mark.
Yeah, good luck.
Okay. Catherine's iPad. Go ahead, unmute yourself.
Hi, Catherine Jursic, 11 Rodman Road. So I have something I want to talk about, and I imagine that people on the board will be defensive. And I'm really just asking you just here, because it is something that I think is really important. So I want to talk about what I see as disrespect to citizenry by the leadership by ignoring our town constitution, which is our charter. And the specific thing is failing to have our capital improvement committee. So the capital improvement committee is required by chapter 42 of our charter. And it states that the Board of Selectmen, which we now know as the Selectboard, shall appoint a capital improvement committee. And there's no confusion ever in law and meaning of shall, to citizens, to government. And yet Ashland, under this board, and for quite some time, actually before this board, has not had this committee. And it's never actually been raised, at least publicly that I know, that, well, I don't think the board can just say, I don't want to follow our constitution. So I want to enumerate some justifications that I've presented in the past, because I don't think they need to be part of this request. One justification is a certain individual on the committee caused it to fall apart. This was quite some time ago. And we also, the committee doing the charter review was smart enough to understand some conditions, and the most recent charter had some language that can allow for removal of a committee member if there are problems. I've also heard that we have a capital plan with help from the Collins Center. And I think that's great that we have the Collins Center, but this is not the residents of the community. It's not the committee. I don't think there's a way for the Collins Center people that made that plan to be the committee. So I think the outside professional help is probably a great idea. And I imagine it could be seen how the committee could work with the Collins Center. So my reasons for asking the board to follow the charter, it's just, to me, it's general democracy and public trust. It's the checks and balance. And when our general simple laws, and again, those are minimums, like Ashland can do better than minimum, but the minimum expectation, I think, of our government is to follow our charter. I also think, you know, perhaps if we had a functioning committee for the amount of time we haven't had it, that maybe 2 large capital projects wouldn't have lined up at the very same time. Or maybe we wouldn't have had to reimburse the state $500,000 for the school roof, because that might have been planned. And I also think along that way that people would have a better sense of when these things were coming if it was a public committee that would be talking about it more. So I'm simply asking to establish the committee. I'm also asking to do it in a manner that gives the public confidence that the committee is representative of the town. So I think that seriously means to revisit diversity area. I guess that means area of town. I think we know from the precincts that my area does not always vote how maybe a majority is, but that shouldn't be disregarded. Age, income, I think that's a little harder. Maybe if people aren't forthcoming, but we also kind of know from the community some ranges, I think, of just conversations with people, race and gender. And I just don't want to stand up a committee of handpicked people that, you know, will vote the same. I think that's disingenuous. I'm not sure that anyone would do that, but we need to do better. We need to, you know, rebuild public trust. So I don't know. I think under COVID, it's a slightly more difficult task to assemble a committee, but you are obligated to perform it. I also think, I mean, COVID's given a lot of pluses that someone could be home with their baby and log into the meeting. So we have to take the advantages too. And so to be honest, I don't know how you couldn't take it seriously. And if you want to be dismissive, I'm basically imploring you to view it from just a citizen's perspective as a broken public trust to our agreed upon rules. I think forming a functional capital committee is a step to rebuild the public trust. Thank you.
You are welcome. Thank you for coming forward, Catherine. I think, you know, I'm going to address this as chair. I think we appreciate you bringing this forward. I'm hearing the fact that the public trust is important, and certainly as an elected official, I think that's important. I know that we as a committee in the next 2 to 4 weeks are going to be having a retreat to talk about how we appoint members of committees and how we reappoint members of committees. We've done some research looking how other communities do it. We're also going to look at all the committees that we are required to appoint, as well as ones that we've appointed, and are there things that we can look at and change. So I'm sure that when we are looking at the list of committees that need to be appointed, we will look at the required ones by the charter and work to create those. Back in the summer, we reinstated the historical committee, the historical commission. Yep. And that was a bit of a process, but I think that was a process that worked well. So we'll look at that as well as some of our other things that we want to look at changing, because to your point, we want to make sure we do have a diverse representation on committees. Sometimes it's hard because we've had people in committeeships for a long time, and we need to look at not only, you know, keeping things status quo, but how do we get new people involved? And I know for myself and other members that getting new people involved is something that we're going to be looking at, which is why we're going to be looking at how we appoint people and how we do the reappointment process.
Great.
So, but I appreciate you coming on and bringing this to our attention. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, moving on to citizens part. Diane Ring, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. As usual, I want to thank the Select Board for giving up another evening of your life to the town. I want to congratulate the board and Michael and Town Council for the recent ruling from the Energy Facilities Siting Board, which I just think was a real feat, another kind of David versus Goliath move. Looking forward to the update later. And I was just wondering if if you'd be able to entertain questions during that. I just have one at the moment.
I mean, I think we're gonna review the procedural schedule. We're certainly not gonna talk anything about possible strategy or anything like
Sure.
that.
Understood.
But yeah, I think we can, if it's related to the schedule, you can ask, I'll let you ask your question as we're doing that update.
Cool. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Anyone else for citizens participation? No. Okay, moving on. We have one appointment today. It is for the Stormwater Committee. I see Preethi, who we are looking to appoint. Is there anyone else from the Stormwater Committee here? Michael, do you see anybody else from the committee?
I do not see anyone from the storm.
Okay.
Although they did provide a,
They provided, yep, the update as to, yep, the recommendation. So Preethi, am I saying that correctly?
Yes, you are.
Great. Well, first of all, thank you for stepping up and being willing to be appointed to the Stormwater Committee. We've read your talent bank form, but would you be willing to share with people who might be watching a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Good evening. My name is Preethi Sriraj, living in Ashland for past 18 years. My current residence is at 43 Blue Jay Lane. I'm a mother of two. My older one is in Ashland High, graduating this year, and my younger one is in 3rd grade in Mendez. Regarding my qualifications, I have my bachelor's in civil engineering from India, and currently I'm pursuing master's in civil and environmental engineering at WPI in Worcester, hoping to graduate next year. Work-wise, I'm a senior civil engineer or project manager at STV Inc. in Boston. I have my professional engineering license from Massachusetts and New Hampshire, and I've been practicing for past 21 years. My first project being Big Dig in Boston, where I worked as an intern. I'm also an Envision and LEED certified professional. So my background and passion is mainly in water resources management and stormwater management. Hence my interest in Stormwater Advisory Committee and to contribute to the well-being of Ashland in any way I can.
Nice. Lots of great background.
that's impressive.
Yeah. Any questions or comments from other members of the select board?
Just a bachelor's degree in civil engineering. Maybe we should wait for a doctorate or something.
Yeah, but she's going for her master's.
Oh, okay.
She'll have it
All right.
soon.
The resume certainly speaks for itself. So thank
Absolutely.
you for stepping up to fill this position, Preethi.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Yes.
If there's no other questions or comment, if I can get a motion, do we know what the term is, or is there no term on this one, Susan?
I don't have the stuff in front of me.
Okay.
Hold on, I can look at the,
Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. So
This
this is the vacant one,
Yes.
8/31/22.
8/31/22. Okay. If I can get a motion to appoint Preethi Sriraj with a term to end 8/31/22 to the Stormwater Committee.
So moved.
I got a so moved from Brandy, and we'll take the second from Joe. Roll call vote. Kinsman,
Aye.
Vignani,
Aye.
Mitchell,
Aye.
Shear,
Aye.
and Greaves. Aye. And that passes 5-0. Preethi, thank you for stepping up. Congratulations on being appointed to the Stormwater Advisory Committee. And I'm sure you will add to that committee. They do a lot of important work. So thank you again.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Looking forward. Yes.
Yeah, have you met Rob St. Germain? I imagine you have. outgoing-
Just,
Yeah.
yes, I did. For my first WAC meeting, he was there.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
And we'll be later on.
Unfortunately, he is stepping down, unfortunately. So
So
I
I
heard
did
that,
want to just note that, Rob he was Mr. Stormwater Management
yeah.
fee here.
Yes,
So
I heard.
you've got big shoes to fill there. So I wanted to
I don't know
thank
if
Rob
I
for
will
his-
be, but I'll try my best.
Yeah.
Well, you've got the right
We
name.
asked
For the fee, but I can't anymore. So I don't know.
Madam Chair, does she have to go in front of town clerk to get
sworn in, yes.
The
Yeah.
committee? Okay.
So just reach out to the town clerk's office. You can get sworn in, and then that way you can be a voting member of the committee.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
You
thank
are
you.
very
Thank you.
welcome.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for stepping up.
Bye.
Okay, moving on in our agenda. We have our consent agenda to accept regular session minutes. Nope, we're skipping that. Accept the tri-board meeting minutes from March 24th, 2020. Accept to release executive session minutes pending town council review for 2/1/17, 7/11/17, 11/1/17, 1/6/18, 6/14/18, 9/5/18, 10/3/18, 11/7/18, and 2/17/21. Accept the gift of 390 $25 gift certificates from Shaw's as part of the Holiday Neighborhood Program. Accept a grant of $25,000 from the Stanton Foundation for the dog park design. Accept the town manager appointment of Casey Richards as a per diem intermittent dispatcher. Accept the resignation with our thanks to Robert St. Germain from the Stormwater Advisory Committee, and accept the resignation also with our thanks to Marty Ring from the Conservation Restriction Working Group. If I can get a motion.
So moved.
That's presented.
Thank you. So moved from Steve and a second from Joe. Kinsman,
Aye.
Mignani,
Aye.
Mitchell, Shear,
Aye.
and Greaves, aye, and that passes. Thank you very much. Moving
And-
into old and new business, an
Madam Chair, before we
Eversource.
move on, can we just comment on some of the items on this consent agenda? I don't know if there's some big news here with the Stanton grant and that Shaw's gift. I don't know much about it, but it looks impressive. $9,000 is, and of course, Marty resigning from the Conservation Restrictions Working Group. Thanks, Marty, for all your efforts over the years. And of course, Rob St. Germain, who really spent hours with Steve and other people putting this stormwater initiative into effect. So just wanted to comment on that. And also, if anyone cares to talk about the Shaw's grant and the Stanton grant, I'd love to hear about it. So,
I was going to do the Stanton grant in my board report,
okay, great.
so I can do it then.
I think that's the beauty of a consent agenda is that we don't.
Oh, geez, come on.
But no, I would agree, Rob, certainly, to Rob St. Germain and to Marty for the work that they've done on both of those groups. It's always appreciative. It's always hard to see someone who has spent a lot of time and energy on certain things stepping down. But sometimes we understand that people have to make some changes in their lives. So, okay. Now, moving on to old and new business. Eversource update, reviewing the procedural schedule. Michael?
Yes, thank you, Yolanda. Diane alluded to this earlier in her comments, but just to give a little bit of background, on October 20th, Hearing Officer Sharkey issued what's known as a procedural order for a limited reopening of the record. It's also known as a scoping order to address the implications and decisions of the land court ruling on the project, the Eversource transmission line project. As the board is well aware and the public is well aware, we submitted motions, we submitted testimony, we submitted briefs related to that. And we most recently learned that Hearing Officer Sharkey has ruled that the town's request for additional due process appears to be within the limited scope defined in the scoping order on the issue of the pipeline removal. So as Diane said, this is a very big win for us. It gives us the opportunity to introduce a lot of new evidence regarding the impact of the original transmission lines removal on the town. And again, that was the basis of our request to reopen it. Hearing Officer Sharkey, she is looking to develop a robust record for the hearing or the board to be able to review and come to a conclusion. And she feels that the participation of both parties in this process will result in a robust effort or robust record, which would allow the board to assess the project and, as proposed, that it adequately mitigates the cost and environmental impacts. So again, this is really limited to some of the environmental impacts that are associated with the project and the removal of the pipeline. To that end, we have retained Lucas Environmental, who did the peer review services during the Conservation Commission hearing, to help prepare supplemental information and prepare expert witness testimony. The scope for Mr. Vero, that's who Lucas Environmental is to review the documents submitted to date pertaining to the project design since the time it was legally determined that only one pipeline is permitted within the existing gas easement. As I said, prepare expert witness testimony in cooperation with town council pertaining to the matter, and then attend EFSB hearings as required to present and defend expert witness testimony. That starts tomorrow, March 4th, with the filing or simultaneous pre-filed testimony that is being completed as we speak between Attorney Winter and Lucas Environmental. And I will be able to get a copy of that brief to the board tomorrow, or that pre-filed testimony tomorrow. From there, we'll move forward later in March to discovery and then responses to that discovery. We'll then have an evidentiary hearing, and then record requests will be due on April 22nd. And we'll file initial briefs on May 6th and reply briefs on May 13th of 2021. So this is being pushed out at least until at least a few more months. So I think it's good news.
Yeah.
This was really kind of the perspective that we were trying to take with regards to the land court decision, is how this impacts the environment and environmental impacts of the project. And so that's kind of what we inserted into our motions. And apparently Brian made a very good case. So congratulate him.
Yeah, congratulations, Brian.
Questions or comments from board members?
Just a procedural question, Michael. So I would expect, what's his name? Mr. Vero from Lucas Environmental. So the way to work when Eversource presents, it's really the ball is in their court to really present a comprehensive plan with the new reality. So, but I presume a big part of this will be us reviewing what they say and then commenting on it. Is that true?
That is correct.
Basic? Yeah,
that's correct.
And
Okay.
I would remind people that the scope of this is still rather limited to, as Michael said, the impacts of the pipe, the new taking out the old pipe and replacing it in basically mostly wetlands and other environmental impact. No big picture issues really seem to be allowed under this process. So kind of is what it is there. But
Yep.
It's good news overall.
Okay. Any other board members, questions, comments? No? Diane, you wanted to ask a question?
Thank you very much, Yolanda. This is really kind of a housekeeping question, but I think people watching will appreciate knowing if the hearing, the virtual hearing is something that the general public can watch.
The hearings that I have been involved in before, the public has been allowed to watch, but it was mostly in person. They weren't televised. Of course, that was pre-COVID. So I can find out the answer whether or not these virtual hearings are going to be open to the public as well.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Thank you, Michael.
Okay. Mark, you have a question? Go ahead.
Just a quick question I always ask, through the chairman to Michael. Is this part of the right-of-way language that's being worked on?
Say that again, Mark. Is this part of
The right-of-way? The right-of-way. I always ask this question.
No, this solely deals with the impacts of removing the existing pipe in the right-of-way or the easements that are there. I'll make it real quick and end right here. So it's not the right-of-way, but it's the width right-of-way wordage. Well, that's going to be one of, I think that is a part of the larger argument, Mark, is, we know we have a good idea what the impacts were going to be. Just installing one pipe, now that you have to install one pipe and then also remove another one, does that double the impacts? How do you do that within the width, the temporary easement that you would have? So it's part of a larger argument, I think.
Okay, so it's not going to be removing what they originally planned, but it might be reshaping the numbers to come out more updated than what they were.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay. Chuck? Unmute.
So the limited
Scope.
agenda, for example, is it relevant to say that Eversource doesn't have an Article 97 approval for going through the town forest or through the Great Bend properties? Can we raise that, or is that, it seems
I don't know that
like
we want to get into specifics, Chuck, about what
Okay.
we can and can't raise
Okay.
in regards to litigation. So
Okay, I understand. Sorry.
that's
Well,
okay.
It is something that we should think about anyway and be aware
But
of.
it's not something we want to discuss here in public session. We want our lawyers to look at it and then bring stuff to us. So,
Yes, but we do want to make sure they're aware of it. And that's, I think, what Chuck is doing. So,
okay, but best not, anyway, yeah.
Sure.
I think we're good. Okay, any other questions or comments regarding this? No, okay. Moving on in our agenda, next item. Discuss the status of our BAA grants. So we've had a couple people ask about funds that they've been given, that they've requested, that we've approved in the past. Of course, with the marathon not running last year, we don't have all the funds from people who we had given numbers to. Our balance, correct me if I'm wrong, Susan, is just under like $10,000 from our BAA grant funds. We have, I think, 2 people who Town Forest Committee had been given funding. They decided not to do that project. They want to do something else. They want to know if they can use those funds. And the league baseball team were approved funds last spring that they didn't use, and they want to know if they can use those funds. So we have to decide if we want to basically allow these people who have been approved funds, but some of them we approved before we had our runners' money in, if we want to allow those people to use those funds, and then do we want to open a grant process and see if we use from the selectman account instead of from the BAA grant account. Did I get that all right, Susan?
How much is in the selectmen's account?
I think,
I think it's 7,800.
yeah. No. 100
Oh,
or
in the
1,000?
BAA, sorry.
The BAA is almost 10, and then I think the selectman is like 70K.
Yeah.
70K, okay.
But that could, right now, we don't know, that has come from stuff at Framingham State and Northeastern. So that, we don't know how quickly that will replenish. And that's what we do, things like our volunteer lunch, our volunteer breakfast, our recognition of employees. You know, there's a lot of things, there's other things we use that for. So I think we need to, you know, the first discussion is, you know, people aren't going to be running until the fall. So, and we don't know how many numbers we're going to have because they're limiting the number of actual runners. They have opened up for virtual runners and they're trying to hit a certain number so people could virtually run, but we don't know if people are going to want to do that and raise funds for the town.
I would suggest that we honor what we've already committed to. And as far as I'm concerned, the repurposing of the money for the town forest is certainly, for me, acceptable.
Okay.
And then I would defer, I think, moving forward with opening up a grant round until we have more information regarding, you know, the runners, the number of runners, what we can anticipate, and then maybe open it up in the fall. I suspect, and Michael or Ed, I see Ed Berman on the call. I suspect that we're still going to have certain restrictions moving forward and through the spring and so on. But you know, that would be my best, you know, estimation of moving forward at this point.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
I think Steve brings up a very valid point about seeing what we have available, seeing how much money will be raised with either virtual runners or the runners who are given the ability to run the full race. I put feet on the road attitude. I would hesitate to make sure that organizations are looking for these monies and then we commit to these monies and then we don't have the monies available. That would not look good for us if we do something like that.
Right.
So I would say we hold off until we know, we have a better understanding. That would be my take.
And I would just add one more thing, Yolanda, please, as I'm thinking about this. You know, one of the things that we always fund, especially in the springtime, is the garden club, and you know, all of the plantings that they do. And you know, I don't want to automatically throw out an exception now to the concept, but I think we need to be flexible as well and accommodate that kind of support.
So we funded the garden club in the fall.
Right.
And I think they're going to be okay for right now. So, but we, in the fall, because they couldn't do their plant sale last year and as they were heading into the holidays, we did fund them. And I think as of right now, they're going to be okay for the spring.
Good. Good.
And they're working to have their plant sale in the beginning of May. So that'll help them as well. Yep. Brandy?
I was just going to say, and we've also been open if there's a specific need that comes to one of us, and
yep,
you know, given COVID and the limited, people aren't going to be asking for a typical needs that are more programming based, but maybe it's, you know, like you said, Steve, the garden club, or you know, if AYBS wants to work on the fields for the spring or something like that, if it's a specific thing, you know, I know we've talked about sort of ad hoc requests on an as requested basis. So I think that's a good idea. I think opening it up for a full grant cycle is, you know, without kind of knowing what the next 6 months are going to look like, I think is, you know, I agree. I think we should wait on that.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is if we've given people grants and they are looking for those funds now, that we honor those grants. So it sounds like the Town Forest Committee and League Baseball. Susan, if I would ask for our next meeting, if you could let us know who, you know, if there's anyone else that we've committed monies to but haven't used them that might be coming to look for those. And if we need to move money from our selectman gift account to cover some of those grants.
Okay, so there is no impact on the Town Forest Committee. That money has already been removed from your account. given
Okay.
to them was sitting there for a particular purpose. We do have several, and I can send you guys a list of ones that you deferred for payment in the spring that were given in the fall. So I can send you a list, and then you can decide if you want to issue all of those or not.
Okay, so if, for the next meeting, if you could show us the list and show us our balance, and then how, and then we can decide.
I'm happy to.
Okay,
You
and
want-
then, and not open a new grant round for this spring. So if other people come looking for new monies, let them know we currently are not doing a grant round because we're not going to be having runners raising funds at this point.
Okay.
Joe?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I see Ed Berman's, listening in. I do have a question for Ed, if he can answer this. I know a lot of the restrictions are starting to ease up a little bit with the gatherings and social gatherings per se. I don't know if that's going to continue throughout the summer. If it does, we've had discussions about putting on at least one summer concert to bring back some normalcy to the area of entertainment and enjoyment for the community as a whole. That a free concert as they have been since the inception. So I don't know,
Yep.
Ed, do you have any idea that's going to?
Yes. Yes. So Joe, right now it's off the table. There's going to be additional as long as things keep trending in the right direction. The governor's going to open up a few more things on March 22nd. So I'll have to wait to see what the guidelines say. They did something really interesting with singing. They've actually said no singing except for K through 12. But so they can have singing in the school now, but nowhere else. So I could probably give you more information after the 22nd.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Thank you, Ed. Okay, anything else under the BAA grants? If not, next thing is the Ashland Lions Regatta. And this is not, we don't need to approve anything, but it was forwarded to me to let us know about it. I know they've also forwarded this to our Conservation Commission. They seem to have a very good plan in place. It's a fundraiser for the Lions. They, as many other organizations, have had their fundraisers really affected. So this is a fun toy boat regatta that's going to happen over on the Sudbury River. They're going to launch from, where does it say? I forget where, but it's going to be over by the VFW. The finish line is going to be by the VFW. So, and the boats will go over the park at Marathon Falls, over the falls at Marathon Park. So you can purchase. So again, this was just to let people know about it. So, and if you want to get tickets, you can reach out. The information's in our packet. Any comments or questions or concerns?
Yeah, just it's great to see people actually using the river for a recreational resource. And I actually didn't hear about it from the Lions. But I presume they have some sort of cleanup plan in place.
Yes. Yeah. They have a number of boats that they're going to be getting. They're going to be, they're going to have all the boats numbered. They're going to know when they have all the boats, and they're going to go through and clean it all up when they're done.
Well, we may get a call to help, I guess. I don't know. So
being Lions, we might. But that's okay. And hopefully the 27th is a nice day, and it'll be a good opportunity to be out on the river or near the river. And you don't need to be present to win. So you can buy your boat for $5 and, and it's a good fundraiser. Okay. Next thing on our agenda. So Rob, you brought this up at our last meeting, and we thought we'd just double check it and review it and vote to send this, is the letter to Senator Spilka and copying Representative Jack Lewis, just to endorse our support for the language of the budget proposing the MBTA advisory board.
Yeah, so I'm presuming people had a chance to look at it. It's pretty straightforward. Just to review briefly for people, this is to actually put into legislation and law that the MBTA advisory board, of which Ashland is a member and I'm the current representative, will have a voice in naming one of the members of the MBTA board of directors. So that'll go into effect, assuming the governor's budget gets passed. And this is a letter endorsing that to our Senator Spilka and Representative Lewis. And, I think it's a good basic move for us to have at least some voice in the governance of the MBTA. So I would ask for support for that endorsement for this letter.
Okay. If I can get a motion to support the letter as presented.
So moved. Go ahead.
Yes, so moved from Brandy, and we'll call it a second from Joe. All those in favor will just do hands up. Aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Great. So Susan, if we can get that on letterhead, then I'll come in and give it a wet signature.
Thanks, Rob.
Great, thank you
Rob,
all.
for
Yep.
drafting that. Next on our agenda, discussion of Robert Hill Way, the housing building that is up there. I've driven by a couple of times. It looks to be very nice. I think it's going to be a nice addition of some low-income housing and some nice affordable housing for Ashland. Michael, other input and information?
Yeah, this is actually related to the second phase of Robert Hill Way.
Okay.
As the board knows, and maybe most of the public, there were supposed to be two phases related to Robert Hill Way. The first one has been constructed. Robert Hill Way has decided not to move forward with phase two. So if the board recalls, what they executed back in 2015 was called a deed in lieu of foreclosure. And if Robert Hill Way had not made a payment on the land by a certain date, which was December 31st, 2020, that the ownership would then transfer back to the town. So I did want to let the board know that that has happened. So that is the status of that. They will not be moving forward.
Michael, how big is that parcel?
Interesting. I'm not sure, Yolanda.
Okay.
If I recall, the larger parcel was split up roughly in half. The interesting thing is that so this parcel that we're referring to now actually has an irrigation well. Really drilled on it. So because Robert Hill Way was hoping to use that for phase one. So.
And they did not use the well, or?
They currently cannot use the well until they receive permission.
Okay, so so we get the property back, do we then have to look at what we do with that property? I mean, probably just keep it as open space, but okay.
Yes.
So we should put that on a future agenda item to discuss and determine what we do with that parcel and if there's anything that needs to be brought forward to town meeting regarding it.
Yolanda, I have a question for Michael.
Go ahead.
I just recall, Michael, the payments from Fish were based in, and I don't recall the exact amounts, but the payments to the town were separated between the two lots. Is that correct?
That's correct.
What was that? Those dollar amounts?
Each of them were around $500,000 each, not exact, but.
So we received $500,000 for obviously the first lot. We have the land back in lieu of the second payment.
That's correct.
Okay.
Madam Chair, just to continue that
Go ahead.
discussion with the well, and the well, it's not an irrigation well, but it's a well that's on the property that was turned back to the town. Is that correct? So we have the responsibility of maintaining that well. Do we know if the well is a good well, that there's, clean water coming out of there, or is it a well that may need work on it, or is it something that we could utilize? Because I know that we have poor water pressure up there. I was just wondering if that's something that we could attach and utilize for the residents up there as well.
No, actually utilizing that irrigation well would at this point in time hurt the pressure situation until the booster pump is completed. From what I understand, it's a good well. I would want to have more of a discussion with Doug and just kind of find out something about.
So I would recommend this. Let's get an update on that property. Now that we own it, what do we need to look at doing with it? What is the well? And let's bring that forward for further discussion at one of our next meetings.
Yeah. Can I just ask a question, Madam Chair, of
Yep.
Michael on this? Mike, what's the background? Like, what happened here? What are do you have any idea of the current implications for this, or was this a surprise, or I don't.
I think there were questions being raised all last year whether or not they were going to move forward with phase two. I think as everybody knows, this project has not been easy for anybody, the neighborhood, I think the board, the community, and it hasn't been easy for Fish either. So I think taking all of that into consideration, they thought it was in their best interest to move along.
Okay.
But I really, that's just speculation on my part. I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, so let's get the history
Yep.
and then we
Okay.
can talk further. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Next, update on annual town meeting warrant and timeline. Michael.
Okay. So at our last meeting, or it was a recent meeting, we talked about moving out the annual town meeting, and we discussed a couple of different ways that we could do that. One would be the board would go ahead and call the annual town meeting prescribed in the charter and then have the moderator move that. The other was to see if the board can move it themselves. What I'm going to do is I'm going to recommend the board move it themselves. And I'm going to propose a date of June 12th, which is a Saturday. And you can do that under Chapter 39, Section 9 of Mass General Laws. So you have the ability to do that. From there, we can work back on some timelines, but if you want to go ahead and open the warrant for that time period, we can move forward with that and start setting
And
up.
was June 12th in conjunction with the town moderator based on his?
He said mid-June and June 19th. I was hoping June 19th might work, but that is now Juneteenth.
Right, so that's a holiday.
So
Okay.
that was
The other
another.
thing I was thinking if we tied it into, because we're going to do it outside with graduation. So yeah, the 12th I think is good. It's the second Saturday in June. Any thoughts or comments? Otherwise, if I can get a motion to have our spring town meeting on June 12th, 2021.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, in
Have
a
a town
second.
meeting on June 12th.
In a second.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Brandy.
Do we have a time that the meeting will be held?
I do not right
It's
now.
a
Joe.
Saturday morning, so we'll figure out a time based with moderator and,
Okay.
but I think right now we're looking at the date of it so that we can determine when we have to have articles and things ready. Okay, so I have a motion and a second to have town meeting on Saturday, June 12th. Kinsman,
Aye.
Vignani,
Aye.
Mitchell,
Aye.
Shear,
Aye.
and Greaves, aye. That passes that 5-0. The Springtown meeting has been moved to Saturday, June 12th, 2021. Thank you, Michael. And I expect our next meeting, you'll come back with a timeline and
Yeah,
official
I'll have a
opening.
better idea of warrant articles too. I've got a
Okay.
sense of what they are right now. Obviously, we have some standard ones, but it'll be more up to date.
Steve?
Question, do we anticipate any changes to the election date?
Potentially, I do not have that answer right now, though. It looks like that same section of the law could pertain to municipal
Yeah, which
elections.
is what happened last year as well. Same.
When I was talking to Tara, because we've done elections successfully during COVID, she personally, and this may have changed, I don't know, did not see a reason to move town election, but if anything changes, I'm sure we'll be aware. But as of right now, she's expecting it to be the 18th.
Is there any particular reason we should think about changing the election date?
I don't know of any. I just, this is what we did last year. Because of COVID,
Yeah.
we changed both town meeting and we changed the town election. So the law still accommodates that.
The other
Okay.
thing that's going on at the legislature, I was in a municipal and regional policy meeting yesterday for MMA, and they are looking at right now the use of mail-in ballots and early voting for COVID is only until March 31st. So they are looking to work with the legislature to either make it permanent, mail-in absentee ballot and early voting for not only state elections, but local elections. But if they don't make it permanent, they're hoping that they'll at least extend it through the spring or early fall so that municipal elections can benefit from mail-in absentee ballots and potentially early voting.
It's good to know.
And they're also going to request adding additional funding.
Yeah. So we'll need to know,
elections.
though, at a certain point, Tara will need to know if we're going to allow absentee ballots on a kind of a de minimis basis then.
Correct. Well, I mean, absentee ballots are allowed, right? It's whether or not they can
I'm
be
sorry,
used
yeah.
for the current rule,
Right.
you know, for the current need.
Yes.
Right. I mean, you can always do an absentee ballot and say, I'm not going to be available to go
Yes.
vote. So, and then of course, our ballot will close at least for who's on it at the end of March. So March 31st is the deadline for submitting papers to get on the ballot for May.
That was what I was going to ask is, you know, when will the ballot be set, and is there enough time to get it printed and ready to do mail-in ballots in enough time for the May date? So
Right. So mail-in ballots can I think you can do it up to 4 weeks before. So if our ballot closes on March 31st, when, you know, as to who's running, then that should give them time. And again, that's only if the legislature extends the current emergency laws that are in place to allow the mail-in ballots and the absentee ballots for local elections. They haven't done that yet. So we'll keep watching.
Yeah.
Okay, the next is 3 items, review and consideration and to vote responses for some open meeting law complaints. The first is February 4th, 2021. Another one is February 8th, 2021 and February 11th, 2021. We all had that information in our packet, but Michael, I'm going to let you take us through these one by one, and we do have to vote the response, and we'll do that one by one. Michael?
So yes, the first one that is a response, it's the date of the complaint is the February 4th, 2021
Yep.
meeting. There's a couple of aspects that Mr. Morgan took exception to. I think if you've had a chance to review the responses, it's pretty well laid out what we dispute and what we acknowledge. And so that response is, I don't know, pretty comprehensive. So that's the first one. Second
Okay.
one is related to one that was submitted by Mr. Morgan on February the 8th, 2021. He took some issue with recently posted minutes from the March 9th, 2017 meeting of the Downtown Banner Subcommittee of the Selectboard, Board of Selectmen at the time. And that has a couple of different things in terms of aspects. Number one, that the minutes do not list the documents used in the meeting and the minutes lack sufficient detail. And number three, that it's unclear if they were actually created during the meeting or if they appear to be possibly pre-drafted. So I think Attorney Castro lays out, again, acknowledges areas where we have been deficient, and then also points to certain situations where Mr. Morgan might be incorrect. So that is number two. And then also, so the last one is another one from Mr. Morgan on February 11th, 2021. In that meeting, Mr. Morgan took issue with the December 2nd, 2020 Select Board meeting. So the minutes, he had requested minutes on December 7th, 2020. And according to him, the time to provide the minutes had long since passed. I think we have actually in previous meetings, we've acknowledged some of this and have been working diligently to rectify them.
So wait, our meeting, I mean, this last one in particular just floored me. So the meeting was held on December 2nd, and he requested our minutes on December 7th. Oh,
Yes.
and his complaint is that we then didn't provide them soon enough, right?
Correct. No, I think there's a couple of points here that he makes that are accurate. And again, I think we have acknowledged those in previous meetings,
Right.
and addressed those. And that's one of the things that we've been doing over the last couple of meetings is working to address those and put those out there.
Okay, any comments or questions from the board regarding these 3 responses that we are going to be submitting? Nothing? Okay. Then let's start with the first one. If I can get a motion to approve the response for the violation for February 4th, 2020.
Moved.
Okay, and if I can get a second.
Second.
Okay, motion from Steve, second from Joe. We'll do a roll call vote. Kinsman,
Aye.
Mignani,
Aye.
Mitchell,
Aye.
Shear,
Aye.
and Greaves. Aye, that passes 5-0. That will be submitted. A motion to vote the response for the open meeting complaint against our Ashland Select Board dated February 8th, 2021.
So moved.
Thank
Second.
you. Thank you. I have a motion from Steve and a second from Joe. Kinsman,
Aye.
Mignani,
Aye.
Mitchell,
Aye.
Shear,
Aye.
and Greaves. Aye. Thank you. And the third one, to vote the response to the open meeting law complaint against the Ashland Select Board dated February 11th, 2021.
So moved.
Thank
Second.
you. Thank you. Motion from Steve, second from Joe. Kinsman,
Aye.
Mignani,
Aye.
Mitchell,
Aye.
Shear,
Aye.
and Greaves. Aye. And that also passes 5-0. Thank you to Town Council. Thank you to Michael and to Jen, because I know you've been working on this. Thank you to Susan. I think, Susan, you do a great job with our minutes, and Jen and Michael, thank you for what you do to help create these agendas and get them out. And we always learn from these things, and we will work to make sure we do things to make it easier for the public. And as you said, we are getting up to date with some of our minutes. It's always a process. Okay.
Yes.
Moving on, priority project update, Rail Transit District. Michael.
So first I'll start off with United Group of Companies and their application. They've already started the review process. I know recently Evan White, our engineer, he worked with Tom Houston, if everybody remembers Tom Houston from back in the day, looking at some of the culvert analysis and the stormwater analysis. So that has been started, and looking forward to getting more of that feedback back and incorporate that into the hearing process. I did mention that UGC and Mr. Gaynor are having somewhat of a dispute about some things. Those are related to those 2 parties. It does not involve the town, even though you might be CC'd on a few emails. So I just want to make that very, very clear. The second one is, as we talked about in consent, the town, we were successful in getting a $25,000 Stanton grant to do the design of
Woohoo!
a new dog park over off of Memorial Drive. Jen, do you have an idea of when, because you'll be having to do an RFP for that one, right?
Yes, we will have to do a design or a selection review for that. So through an RFP process to select a designer and engineer that has experience with creation of dog parks. So I do have to reach out to the Stanton grant just to make sure if there's any other provisions that are required. I know that is definitely one that is a provision of the grant, that you have to work with somebody who has created at least one dog park in the past. So I just want to make sure before we lay that out. So I know that the committee has done a lot of work to look at the rules and requirements of that Stanton grant. So I can reach out to both Kara and Candy on that.
A number of communities around us have recently done dog parks, so I think we can potentially reach out to them and see who they used to at least get us some indication. And if you want some extra help with that, let me know.
Great. Yeah, I'd love to just grab even a template of what they used for their RFP process, just to,
Sure.
Sometimes it's easier. So.
Yeah, we can work to get that for you.
Great.
And then, the last thing regarding to the Rail Transit District is the Upper Charles Trail. I know Jen and members of the committee, as well as BSC Group, who is doing the engineering, have been before Concom several times, working with them to permit the project. Jen, is there anything you would like to add?
So we're going back to conservation on, I believe, Monday, if I'm looking at the calendar correctly, for I think the third or fourth time. So I'm hoping that we're able to really sort of outline our mitigation efforts for the work that we'll be doing that's proposed, because it is, although it's along a rail bed, it is, you know, within some 25-foot no disturb zone. And so we're working with BSC and our wetland scientists there to create the right amount of mitigation. So hopefully we'll be able to do that. We're also working with DEP and EPA, just for them to also put another set of eyes. We did that before we started the project, but now that we have a little bit more substantial plans, we were going back to them, and we're currently have a bridge right now out to bid to see if that's a better way to sort of purchase a bridge and then incorporate it into the construction. And then hopefully we will put the construction documents out to bid in the next week or so. So, you know, we're still on track, assuming that we can get an order of conditions from the Conservation Commission to sort of start construction in the early spring and go through early summer for that project.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to get that going.
Yeah, I was, if I could comment, I attended that meeting, and you know, Jen did a great job, and Bill Paley and the Conservation Commission. It was really an interesting exercise, because of course this trail goes right along, I guess, that little pond and through a bunch of wetlands, and it is in the resource area, as Jen said. And it was a really a good kind of problem solving. How do you mitigate for impact on the wetlands? And there was really some creative ideas thrown out there. We're talking about interpretive signs and certain kinds of plantings, and you know, I don't know if we're going to seriously replicate wetlands somewhere. I think in the end that didn't look like a great alternative. I don't remember exactly, but really some, you know, how can we improve the natural environment in the area and through different kinds of plantings and stuff. So in the Concom was actively involved in framing those solutions. So I thought that was a very constructive process, and, you know, so very good. And it's exciting to actually be building a trail. I think this is the first piece of the trail we actually built as part of this. We'll actually build as part of this project. So that's going to be hopefully a great experience. So
Exciting.
Yeah, very exciting.
Yolanda, if I could just comment also, Michael had spoken earlier about the UGC project, and as starting the permitting process at this point. And so I don't know if any of the other board members attended the first ZBA hearing on February 22nd, but that was the introductory hearing opening. And it's going to be laid out by almost topic, whether it's stormwater, whether it's, I'm not sure, there's probably 3 or 4 different meetings that will focus on one particular topic. So if you're interested, keep an eye out for that. I think they, you know, the chair really conducts a very good meeting and kind of really goes through it step by step.
The chair is John, right? John Trefethen.
Trefethen, yes.
Yeah, we are fortunate to have him sitting on the ZBA.
Do we know approximately like how long that process for a 40B usually would take?
Well, this process, it sounds like the number of meetings, you know, as I recall, it could have been 5 or 6. I mean, it's going to be a number of months before they cycle through the complete presentation.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and considering, you know, some of the stuff they've already worked through, so hopefully it goes smoothly for them. Okay, anything else on the rail transit district?
I just have one quick question, and Michael brought it up. This little bout that's going on between the former landowner and UGC, does that affect any of the agreements that have been made and agreed to by UGC and the town, if it delays their construction process when it comes to monies that are promised by UGC to the town? is there an issue that these fundings could be delayed because of what's happening right now?
Well, if the construction is delayed, then yes, it would have an impact on that, because the trigger to some of the mitigation that's in the development agreement is actually predicated on the issuance of building permits and occupancy permits. However, that's if construction is delayed. I'm not necessarily sure that that's actually going to happen.
Okay.
Obviously, we have an extensive history with Mr. Gaynor, so we know how Mr. Gaynor works. We actually have a history with UGC now. We've worked with them for a number of years, and so we know it's probably not going to be a quick conversation that's going to result in some kind of resolution to this, but we'll just wait and see.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Nothing else for the rail transit district. Moving into downtown update, Michael.
So first, just to give an update on the downtown project, I did meet with MassWorks earlier this week in relation to our $3 million grant. The expiration date is actually coming up this June. So we talked about an extension of that grant and how that would work and what that would look like. Had a very good meeting with them. As part of that funding gap, I am asking the board if they would repurpose $849,505 that was in the INI account from Campanelli Thorndike for this project to help close the funding gap. And then also, I did meet with Mr. Gordon and his team, as well as our economic consultants that we had retained. And that was a very interesting meeting. I'm very glad that we retained April and Matthew. They are certainly asking some very difficult questions. Definitely requiring Mr. Gordon and his team to provide them numbers. So they're going to have to sign a non-disclosure agreement and everything to look at their pro formas, et cetera. But it was a productive meeting, I would say.
Okay, couple questions for myself, and then I'm sure other people as well. So we've talked about creating the subcommittee to look at creating a working group for Ashland Mills. Are we at a point where we need to start looking at what a time is to set up those meetings to work with Rich Gordon and April of the economic team and our planning board and design review personnel?
Well, I hope the board had a chance. I'd sent a memo to the board, the working group, and also the goals and objectives of the working group. And if you, unless you have any feedback on that, I would, and you feel like it's worth moving forward, yes, we'll start planning those and setting those up.
Okay. So to the board, did everyone get a chance to review that? And then any questions or comments or changes on that document?
I think it seemed pretty straightforward. Yeah.
Yeah, it did to me as well. I think it's everything that we talked about. I think the composition of the committee is what we discussed, the charge. There was a discussion, Michael, regarding expanding the membership. I don't know if you've had any further discussions or thoughts about that, but we had initially agreed to select board, to planning board, and one design review.
Yeah, I did have a chance to talk with the chair of design review, and so we're going to continue that conversation later. I think just to be clear, because this is a working group, and I want to make sure that everybody understands this is not a group that's going to be making decisions or just making decisions in a vacuum on this project. Part of the charge, as you've had a chance to review, is really to engage in a public feedback process through different methods, public forums. There's a number of different platforms that we could do, and then also incorporate the public feedback into the proposed zoning and the project itself. So,
right, I heard from someone from our newly created historical committee, and they're potentially looking to put a demo delay.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So as part of the process, potentially.
Okay.
So
Doesn't that happen automatically based on the age of a particular structure?
I don't know that it's automatic. I think someone has to determine to put that, but
I
so
think-
I've let them know that, you know, they will be part of the discussion because it's a historical building. So
The only thing I would add to this, I was just, is that it doesn't necessarily talk about bringing this, if we were going to move forward with this project, bringing it to town meeting, because that is also part of the public process of.
it has to go before, because it has to change zoning. It has to go to town meeting. So even though it's not in here, it is something we have to do.
Right, right. So I didn't know if maybe in the goals and objectives, you know, there's
that's a good
something
point.
about, you know, with the idea that this would potentially come to town meeting.
Yeah.
The first one is designate.
One more comment, and it kind of segues into what Brandy is talking about. The MMA had a webinar this past week about the Housing Choice Program. Brandy, were you on that?
I was going to talk about that on my board report, but that's okay. Go ahead.
But I think it's germane to this discussion here because, and I think it's something that we should get as a board, a kind of a legal opinion on the changes regarding, you know, voting thresholds for zoning bylaws on specific purposes, and it doesn't apply to every zoning bylaw change, but for certain changes, certain conditions, it changes from a supermajority of 2/3 vote to a 50% vote of
Simple
town
majority.
meeting. So,
Yep.
and it's germane to the 40R process. 40R is one of the allowable changes that would then incur just the majority vote at town meeting. So I think we should have a you know, a full understanding, and I think the working group should as well.
I agree, and we will get that. One of the things is designate milestone dates, Brandy, to your point. You know, I think Mr. Gordon and his team would like to do this on the delayed Springtown meeting. I'm not necessarily sure if that's the best idea or gives us an opportunity to kind of provide the type of input and help shape it the way that we think it deserves.
But Michael, isn't that just looking at the zoning change, not necessarily approval of the project? And we know that for him to be able to put residential there, we have to change the zoning.
Well, I think the zoning change and the project itself go hand in hand. I think people will support or oppose the zoning project or the zoning based on what they see the project as. And so I don't think we can necessarily decouple them. But you're right, Yolanda, the zoning would need to be passed and then an application would need to be filed.
I'm seeing it as, you know, presenting the project as a whole to town meeting, because I feel like if people aren't seeing the entirety of the project and we ask them to pass a zoning bylaw change, and then this project kind of follows on on the heels of that, people will not feel like it's being fully participatory. So, you know,
I guess I look at it a little bit differently, right? In that we can go forward with the project without asking for permission to change the zoning. And it's like, it almost assumes that we're gonna make sure, you know, it almost assumes that the zoning is gonna be approved, right? It's almost like why, you know, we're creating this project and putting forth zoning at the same time, when that assumes basically that the zoning is gonna be approved. It's almost like we want to review the zoning and what it means to the town even before or early on in the process, I would think.
I would tend to agree with Brandy here. From my readings of the 40R process, they're typically project driven. They're not driven by just the change in zoning. Somebody initiates a project So that is really the horse before the cart. So I think, I would agree more with Brandy that this is project driven and they go hand in hand.
Because we're not having a 40R for the entire downtown. It's really for this parcel, right, Michael? I mean, we're not expanding.
Yeah.
So I would feel.
But it's not 40R zoning that you're creating, right? That's not what the change in zoning is going to be. The change in zoning is going to be mixed use and housing allowed there.
It's a 40R
legislation, though.
I understand that it's under the 40R legislation. So I think we just need to look at this and look at the timing. That's all.
One other question, that Yolanda, you're bringing up the historical commission, maybe, in terms of getting this accepted and passed and getting the right kind of input, maybe we ought to consider having someone from the historical commission on our working group.
Well,
I think we can bring them in, right, to review. If you have, it's that balance, right? If too many people on the working group and trying to get that to work on a regular basis, or do you have a smaller working group and make sure you bring in, conservation at some point is going to have to be brought in, historical has to be brought in, planning has to, so if you keep the, the working group and make sure they have a list of everyone they have to touch base with.
I guess, but yeah, I see your point, but this does have kind of this unique, it's one of our major issues here that we're going to have to deal with is the historical preservation and the nature of it. So it might be helpful in terms of that process and kind of coming to some kind of a consensus and agreement with the community if somebody from the historical commission was directly involved and shared some of the responsibility for going through this process and making a recommendation. So I just think that could be helpful. I don't think this is a group where we're going to have a lot of close votes and, you need to make sure you have, the right kind of, the right number and things like that. It just might help encourage the right kind of participation and feedback early on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really envisioning any votes on this.
Yeah. Right.
So it's like, people working and doing research and communicating about it. So I just think, that might be a little easier on our task if we had a little broader representation. Just my thoughts on it.
Thank you, Rob.
Okay. So do we want to adopt this or do we want to make changes? I think to Michael's point regarding the milestone dates, Brandy, I think those will be created as we go along. I don't know that it needs to be on this document about town meeting.
Yeah, I mean, you don't necessarily need to adopt it. I just wanted to lay out a guideline and get your feedback and make any changes necessary to it before setting up meetings.
And start kicking this off because it's now been a couple months and we need to start, we need to start working on it. So, okay, if we don't need to adopt anything, then we're good to go from what I can tell. Okay, next item, public safety and Mendez. Any updates there?
Before we go to public safety, just a little bit on the Mendez update. I did sign the project funding agreement, reviewed and signed that. It's a pretty extensive document. Those of you who've had a chance to review it, it's consistent with everything that we've been talking about in terms of reimbursement, et cetera. I've also signed I will be signing the LEAD agreement, the LEED agreement regarding participating in that program. And that's through our consultant with the Mendez project or the Mendez building project, which is the Green Engineer. That's the name of that firm. So again, just moving more of our sustainability goals forward. And then public safety, I think Jen and Steve and Joe have really been doing the majority of work on that over the last couple of weeks, at least. So
if you want a quick overview of what we've been doing or what we've been discussing, we've been sitting down and talking about creating an oversight committee to watch over the the construction part of the phase of of this project. Spoke with John Lemieux from our OPM and dealing with HKT and some of the things and procedurally the things that we need to do next as this project goes from, panel discussions to shovel to the ground aspect of it more than anything else. And the procedural aspect of keeping tabs with all the different aspects of that building, keeping it smooth running, making sure that all the invoices are properly dealt with and keyed on a timely fashion type of deal. So, and again, still discussion stage right now. We haven't, put anything into the ground yet, though. I would like to have done 2 months ago, but that's not going to happen with all the snow. But as soon as the snow clears, we'll do that. I know that Jen set up a meeting and we had a wonderful conversation with Jason. I can't think of Jason's last name from Southborough, but he was the chair of the Southborough Public Safety Building Committee. And he gave us some wonderful insight as to what we should be looking for and do to alleviate a lot of the problems coming down the road when it comes to dealing with these types of new sets of guidelines when it comes to construction and invoices and dealing with delays of things of that nature. So to me, it was very enlightening, it was encouraging, and I just was sitting here with bated breath till the good weather comes. So that's a quick synopsis. I'm sure Jen or Steve have additional things they want to say, but that's everything in a nutshell per se.
Yeah, no, I think you did a pretty good job, Joe, of describing where we're at now. It's interesting, Southborough actually had used the same project manager. They also used the same general contractor that we're using for our building. So it was really good to get a concept of the process that they used during the construction phase. And, I can't say that we're going to replicate everything that they did, but they gave us some really, really good insight into that process. And, our goal certainly is to be as vigilant as we can with our dollars that we're spending, as well as providing as much information to the community during the process and to keep everybody informed as to where we're going and what's been completed and so on. So, and as Joe said, I think we're all excited about having that groundbreaking ceremony at some point very soon.
Nice.
And the other thing is to add that to Steve's comments is to keep a running dialogue for the public as it comes to how much money is being spent, where it's being spent on the project. I think it's important, like Steve said, it's our tax dollars, citizens' tax dollars that are being utilized here, and they have a right to know where all their money is going. And so to keep that going on a weekly or a monthly fashion, just to keep everybody updated with that, I think is a very important part of this process, to keep everybody informed. And so that way it doesn't look like, oh, where's our money going to now? And no one's keeping no rhyme or reason. So we're trying to make sure that it's well structured and that the flow of information goes both ways.
Great. Okay. If nothing else on public safety and Mendez, Warren District and Valentine Estate, Michael.
Sure. So with relative to 433 Chestnut Street, those deeds are being finalized and being filed with the registry. With the Warren Barn, I did approach CPC last night about the potential of funding from CPC. I got some really good feedback from them in terms of what they would like to see in regards to a proposal. They would want to make sure that since the barn has been demoed, that it would fit in the requirements of CPC, that it could be, a replica could be rebuilt. And I have done some research on that. They also wanted to have a more fleshed out plan of what we would utilize the barn for. And then I think as everybody feels the same way about this last item, the cost is just kind of hard to swallow. So we've already been working on trying to find a way to reduce that cost and do some value engineering. And so hopefully we'll be able to get an idea if that's possible in the near future. But I really would like to get this project done. I really hope that, CPC would support it and ultimately town meeting would support it.
So what I would say, if we're watching, and certainly we should put this out to people, there hasn't been a lot of discussion about what would happen with the Warren barn once it's put back up. Certainly potential educational tied in with Framingham State or programs related to stuff at the at Warren Woods. But as we find with many of our properties, we buy properties and then afterwards try to think about what we're going to do with them. So I would say, I think CPC makes sense, right? What are we going to do with this barn once we replicate it besides just having it there as the vista? Because it'll be something we have to maintain, and what are we going to do there? So that's a discussion we need to have. So.
And so that's my update on that.
Okay. Valentine Estate.
So Valentine Estate, we've had quite a bit of discussion related to the Valentine Estate over the last couple of weeks. We did have a meeting of the Valentine Committee last week where Legacy Development, who had submitted the one proposal for the reuse of that property, gave a presentation on that proposal. I'll reserve comment on that. I will say that a number of legal issues have been brought up, and they really, I think, I see three major ones that Attorney Mead is looking at and looking into. First of all, is the ability to do any type of commercial activity on that property, given one, the fact that it would need to have a conservation restriction on it, the middle lot in addition to the two outer lots. Two, whether we could do that because it's been purchased with CPC funds or CPC funds partially finance the purchase. And then three, its status relative to Article 97 and the ability to do that. So that is being looked into right now. I think we could all maybe agree that we should probably take a step back on this and get a lot of these questions answered first before we start moving forward with any other process. So, I know what my recommendation is going to be to the committee in terms of a recommendation to the select board. But I do think we'll probably need to press the pause button and at least get some of these things answered.
So Michael, as part of that, we have some vacancies on that committee. There have been people saying that we should fill those vacancies. You've been working with this committee and with the committee that's sitting there. Do they feel that they have the ability to do, if we're going to press the pause button, do we feel this committee should stay in place? Do we feel this committee should be, thanked for all the work that they've done and then we reconstitute it in another way once we've figured out all these legal issues? Is it something the select board takes on directly?
Well, it's, I think the charge given to this original committee was to solicit proposals and review proposals and make a recommendation to the select board. Some people might interpret that to say that, you would need to make a recommendation for a proposal or against a proposal. I see that as being able to make a more broader recommendation to the select board in order to finish their charge. It could be, the recommendation could be that you reject the RFP and work on the conservation restrictions first before moving forward. That to me is a valid recommendation that would be fitting of their charge. And so once that recommendation is made, so that iteration, I guess you could say, of the Valentine Committee, that chapter is closed, and the select board could decide what they wanted to do from that standpoint, either keep the committee as it currently is, thank them for their work, and ask them to provide input in the future, or reconstitute a committee at the present time, or maybe at some future date. So I think probably the most important element, I think, is to get some closure on this piece of it, this
Okay.
RFP process.
And we are also losing the chair of the committee. David Foster is retiring at the end of March, so he will be stepping down as chair.
Correct. And I think, I would let the members of the committee speak for themselves. I've talked to a few of them, and they have mixed feelings regarding this. I think they still would like to I think they would still like to be a part of this in some way, just maybe not as part of this committee. But, I think each individual would have their own take on that.
Okay. Okay. Comments from the board?
I have a question. So as far as the information that Attorney Mead is working on for us, is that coming back, like from a timing standpoint? When do you think she's going to have some opinions on those 3 items? And is that going to be presented to the Valentine Committee first and then come to us? Or is that just kind of, what is the process for that?
Well, I hope to get it, within the next week or so. She's been working on it for a week already. That being said, I would want her to get it right, as opposed to get it to us expeditiously. And once I receive it, I'll distribute it to both the Select Board and the Valentine Committee, because I think it's important. So
Might it make sense, Michael, once we all have it, is to have a joint discussion about it? I mean, is it information that will be discussed, or will it pretty much be straightforward? This is what can and can't happen there.
I don't know. I get,
Okay.
I think it's important to note that, these are legal opinions that are being proffered and put out there. Certainly an adjudicatory body or a judge or an arbitrator would hear the arguments and then be the one making the decision as which argument has more merit or makes more sense.
Okay.
So I do think we'll probably see something that's really more of an opinion. There could be, I think there are some legal facts that we could all agree on. I think Attorney Mead really wants to get this right also, because, and this allows me to address kind of the whole RFP process in general, is, this RFP wasn't done willy-nilly, or, it was certainly rushed, and we talked about that being rushed in order to try to get something done to preserve the structure of the barn before anything happened to it. But, Attorney Mead had reviewed the restrictions that were included as part of the RFP and had okayed everything before it moved forward. Now we do have some of these legal issues that have come up and have been raised, and I think they need to be answered.
One other question, as when Attorney Mead puts together her opinion, I know you had mentioned Article 97, and I am not super familiar with Article 97. So I don't know if that sort of the outline of what that all entails will be included in that opinion, but some background on that would be helpful, at least for me as well.
Okay. I know in Lisa's original memo, which was regarding the Einan Hicks deed restriction and the relationship to the restrictions on the Valentine property, she went a little bit into the Article 97 protections inherent in the property. I do, because the Article 97 limitations or potential limitations are one of the 3 aspects that she is looking into on this. I think she would certainly include that.
I would think so too.
Yeah. Madam
Steve
Chair,
or Rob, go ahead.
Just I have a question. Is part of what, one of the things that came up at the meeting is the kind of the need to put these restrictions in place, both, I guess, the conservation restriction and a historical restriction. Is Lisa, is she able to, or would she comment on that process? because I think we also need to have an understanding of how that process is likely to work, how long and difficult it might be, who are the holders of the restriction, and if we have the capability to have those kind of negotiations, is that going to be an arduous process? I think people have different thoughts on how that process would work, and I don't know much about it, and if this is, is that going to be part of what is she a suitable person to comment or talk about that process as well?
Rob, I know she's going to look at the conservation restrictions, the process itself. I will make sure that all of that you're talking about is incorporated into it in terms of the process of putting on a conservation restriction, a holder, how long that usually takes.
And I think part of the concerns that came up was, how do we decide what those restrictions are? And I actually don't know how that process works. And, people have different expectations on the use of that. We all have, I think, different thoughts on it. And so I think some thinking about that process is going to be important for this, and how that's going to work. I'll go ahead, Steve. I'll collect my thoughts for a little while.
And I'm actually going to speak in a similar arena that you are, Rob. I think that's an important component here. That was one of the major takeaways that I had from the meeting was, the need for the restrictions. I mean, we know nobody disagrees. I guess if we're going to say there's a legal fact, one legal fact is that we need to put restrictions on the property. Now, what those restrictions are, that's a dialogue, that's a discussion. That is something that, that interested parties would go back and forth on. Now, the only conservation restriction I was involved in had to do with Warren Woods. It was a process of back and forth with either prohibited uses or allowable uses. I agree, Rob. I think that is an important component here. Unfortunately, Ashland, I don't think has had a good track record with putting restrictions on properties. And, it's not on our agenda tonight, so I don't want to get into a deep discussion about conservation restrictions on properties that we own. But we've got a number of properties, as we all know, that do not have restrictions on, some of which we bought over 10 years ago. So it is a challenging area, and I think we should try to get as much clarity as possible, Rob. So I would agree with you.
Yeah, and if I might add, I think to Steve's and Rob, your point, I think also these conservation restrictions need to capture intent as well. I think intent matters in something like this. The board's original direction or ask of CPC was to put those funds related to the acquisition on the two outer parcels. There was a reason for that. That was to give more flexibility to that middle parcel. And that is actually what was discussed in several CPC meetings, and it was also discussed in many households across the town and in different forums. So I don't think we can get away from intent when we're talking about putting on restrictions on the property.
I agree.
Yeah, and I think that's where the public process is important because, the Ashland citizens, went to a lot of meetings. There was a lot of effort. We put a lot of money into this. So it's important we come out of it with something that's agreeable to at least, try to reach some sort of consensus. I had a question in terms of putting things on pause. Is there things with the structure that we need to worry about in the near future that we should be taking action on? We've heard discussions about the roof and the foundation and, that kind of thing. If we're not moving forward, and which I think is probably, in terms of development, which I think is probably appropriate, what do we need to do short term, especially if the committee's not actively working?
Well, I'm not necessarily sure how the committee would be involved in that process, but so we're actually in we've actually received bids to not restore, but shore up part of the foundation.
Okay.
And we'd be looking at funding. That's around 25,000 for that. I will say that all of the, I guess you could say, historical preservation experts that we have had come in have said that the foundation is the key, and making sure that shoring that up is critical to keeping that structure up. We also have a number of people, some of whom I respect their construction experience very well, that, you know, the roof is something that needs to be addressed. So the roof is a little bit more of an expensive proposition, but it's certainly something that we could explore, you know, taking care of.
Yeah, because I think we're all aware that as time goes by, we don't want to get in a situation where, as happened at the Warren barn and that sort of thing. So,
well, you know, I will say one of the things that has been reiterated time and time again at several meetings is that this barn has held up for hundreds of years. And so what's a couple of years?
okay.
That being said, I would rather err on the side of caution and take care of some of these things.
And
Right. We also have other properties where we've said, oh, you know, the barn has stood there for a long time, and then all of a sudden
it
we get
goes.
some kind of freak storm, and all of a sudden the barn collapses. So, you know, we got to be careful what we're doing and make sure that
Right.
where we keep that barn up, because that's what the townspeople expect.
All right. So I would just make a couple points in that hope, whatever we do, I hope we do it relatively quickly. And I'm not sure, you know, what the committee is going to. I think they should give us a formal recommendation. I'm willing to continue with this committee and appoint the 3 new members and have that discussion, or appoint another committee, or we can discuss other alternatives, but we should do it expeditiously, I think. And also, you know, I did want to, you know, that was, you know, I think I want to thank Carl Hackinson for bringing out some of these legal issues. I think those are important. We may not all agree with everything he says, but I think the kind of legal experience and concern that he brings out has been, you know, beneficial for this town and will continue to be. And I think it's important to acknowledge that. And, you know, thank him for his efforts. So I did want to make that statement. And I think it'd be good if this process continues to be driven by, you know, citizens, you know, with having input and, you know, trying to reach consensus. And maybe there's some, you know, even if there's difficult issues and different expectations. So I did want to say that. So
I agree, Rob. One thing I'd also, and I don't know if you've thought about this, Yolanda, Michael, you know, you mentioned Dave Foster retiring at the end of the month. Have you considered bringing him in as a guest at our second March meeting?
Yes, we've already discussed that, and Michael has already reached out to him.
Oh, very good.
Very good.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes, I mean, you know, it's been, you know, he's been doing a lot of work. So, so it doesn't sound like we want, or at this meeting, that we're going to appoint any new members. I think, Michael, it sounds like you should let the committee sort of have their discussions, maybe decide, you know, what to do with the RFP process that's already happened. Let them come maybe at our next meeting, let them do their final recommendation. And then while we have the committee members there, we can ask them if they'd like to continue in a potentially new role once we figure out what's going on with the legal issues and what we decide to do next. But that way we could ask them directly at our next meeting if they'd like to stay involved in the process. How does that sound to people on the board?
That's sensible.
I'm seeing a nod from yes. Okay.
Sure.
Works here.
Okay, good. Okay. That's it for the Warren District and the Valentine Estate. Moving on to the Route 126 project. Is Doug joining us, or do you just have an update from Doug, Michael?
No, I just have an update.
Okay.
So they've started the process of tree clearing, and that's over towards the Holliston line. One of the things that we are kind of running up against is town personnel shortages related to this project, and you know what that is entailing. It's going to probably require about 10 details per day. That's what at the high points. That's what
10
10
details? Wow.
So one of the things that we are doing is we've actually reached out to the fire department, and they have the ability to work details after a certain bit of training, and after obviously that has to be negotiated. All of that has been done already. So
Could we reach out to auxiliary from other towns?
we could. We're going to have to enlist all of those efforts in order to
Wow.
do enough details. The other thing that's a little bit more concerning is that we will probably have to dedicate one water and sewer person to this project, probably a day or every other day. So we're just dealing with
And
that.
why is that, Michael?
Because they have to handle everything related to the water and sewer infrastructure. They have to make sure that, because that's not part of this project.
So they have to make sure that our water and sewer infrastructure is okay.
Correct.
Okay.
And it's not necessarily in the place where it was supposed to be. So they have to do that and turn on valves and turn off valves and all of that stuff.
Okay.
So even though we term it a state project, it still has a lot of town involvement related to it.
Michael, do we have a schedule from the state for this project? Because as long as we've been discussing it, it's going to be, we had, 2-year project. And I got notification through the reporter, so I don't know for sure. The state has told him that it will be completed in 2024.
I got that same notification.
That makes it a 3-year process.
Yeah, so I got that same notification. I would go with the updated date when we're talking about it publicly.
Okay.
I would really defer to MassDOT's updated timeline, really.
And do we have an official timeline from them, or can we get one, or can we get one through Green?
Yes, I'm sure we can get a more detailed timeline.
Okay, that'd be good so that we can, I know we're going to be updating people on what's happening and when, but if we could sort of see a detailed what the plan is, and of course things sometimes get pushed out because of weather or materials or anything like that. I think it would be good to sort of give a big overview of timing so that people would understand that. Okay.
And that's it for 126.
Okay. Town manager report.
So I'll start with everything that's not directly on here. I have quite a few things. First thing I want to talk about is Ashland is United is hosting like a curious community conversation. That's going to be a virtual one. So that's going to be held this Sunday. I will be putting more information out about that in a newsletter. And, we had a similar one not too long ago, which was really based around food and kind of stories around our food. I found that was a very stimulating conversation, and it was really a neat way to kind of get to know people from other cultures and just know different Ashland residents and kind of where they come from and their backgrounds. So I would encourage everyone to attend that if they can virtually.
That's Sunday night, I believe, March 7th.
Correct.
Yep.
So, they do good work. Ashland is United, and it's been difficult with the whole virtual COVID thing, but they've somehow found a way to make it work. And that's at 7:00, I should say. Next thing I want to talk about is the person that we had appointed as our health director has unfortunately chosen to stay at his current position. So again, that's unfortunate, especially since 3 other health director jobs have opened up since then. So we're kind of back to the drawing board. We're doing an active search, and hopefully we'll be able to fill that as soon as we can. In other personnel related issues, though, I will say that trying to find Paula's replacement as library director has been, I think, a little bit smoother. So today I interviewed 2 finalists and hope to be making a decision soon. Both of them are great candidates. I think the town will be happy with either one. They each bring different strengths and skills and backgrounds to the position, And so hopefully we'll be having a new library director starting soon.
Nice.
And then finally, Ed's on the line. I want to congratulate Ed Berman. He was, last night, the Board of Health chose to award Ed the Mary Mortensen Award.
Oh, congratulations.
His work during this COVID-19 health crisis. And those of you that know Ed know that he goes above and beyond, spends hours upon hours, well above 40 hours a week on this job. And I think it's well-deserved. I know Ed will certainly acknowledge his team that he's been working with. They've been doing a great job as well. So I want to congratulate him. And I said, for some reason, he's decided not to put his camera on. Now it's probably like the first, oh, there you go. There you go. So
congratulations.
I was dealing with a COVID thing.
Oh, sure.
So congratulations. Ed.
Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations, Ed.
Well deserved.
Ed, why don't we make you useful here? Why do you want
I
to
was going to say, while you're here,
COVID update and vaccinations? Before we get into that, I just want to make a public service announcement. It came to my attention today that the most recent issue of Local Town Pages indicated that the town had vaccine. That was info taken from an earlier newsletter that I had published when we actually did have vaccine. As you know, we don't have that anymore. So just make sure that anybody who's watching realizes that we don't have vaccine here at the town of Ashland. So, Ed, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. So we'll kind of talk the vaccine route. So just a little quick bit of history. When we initially were doing all of our applications to get vaccine for the town, we kept getting denied. And then we found out first we had joined a partnership to do our first responders. That was a requirement from the Department of Public Health. So the Department of Public Health, in essence, said that we had to keep that partnership, which was fine. We were okay with that. So after doing this partnership, we were able to get those original, basically 1,000 doses of Pfizer. And we worked with Hopkinton, Westboro, Northborough, and Southborough to do a vaccine clinic over 4 days in Hopkinton, which was very successful. We were promised the second doses for that clinic, which starts on Friday this week. I thought it was run very well. I was there every day helping with that. And then we found out that after that clinic, that DPH was no longer going to send vaccine to our collaborative that was created. So we put together the 7 towns. We put together another proposal. We sent that to the Department of Public Health again. I'm still requesting to continue this partnership. And we guaranteed them that we would be able to do 750 to 1,000 doses a week, which was what we really wanted to do. The town of Northborough even had monies available to hire a vaccine coordinator that would have overseen the day-to-day operations of the clinic. The plan was we were going to have it in Westboro at the Doubletree, and that facility was already secured by the fire chief in Westboro. And then what we were going to do is 1 day a week, one of us, so like, for example, I would have been at the clinic on Mondays to oversee the operation, Westboro would have been there on Tuesdays, whatever it might be. So again, we actually were able to secure a conversation yesterday with the one of the commissioners from DPH. We re-proposed our ideas and they asked us for more information, which was submitted today. So again, we're still pushing for this. We're trying, but I do want to give, kudos to Joanne Duffy and her crew and, some of the elected members from the Board of Health. When we needed to make calls for people to get them into our vaccine clinic in Hopkinton, especially people without computers, everybody stepped up to the plate. And, I would say Ashland residents, we probably did close to 350 Ashland residents that were over 75.
Good.
That's good.
That's nice to hear.
It is.
Okay.
All
Thank you
right.
for that, Ed. And again, congratulations on
Thank you.
being awarded the Mary Mortensen Award.
Thank you. Team effort.
Good work. Good work. So I will end on a more stimulating subject, which is the FY22 budget. So I'll let you know. So first of all, I was able to have a conversation with Mr. Adams just regarding the budget, looking at what we have put together, utilizing $900,000 in stabilization fund money as opposed to $1.4 million. There is a gap between what the school department would be requesting and what that bottom line figure is. Jim and I did talk about just how early in the process we are, especially with regards to the state budget. And I think a lot depends on what the state numbers are coming out. And we're, from a practical standpoint, not just a health perspective, but from a practical standpoint, you know, we greatly enjoy the extended deadline for the extended time period for town meeting, just because that gives us a little bit more time to get some more fidelity in the state numbers. We should at least have the House budget by then. So that's going to be a critical factor, and also where the Keefe Tech budget comes in as well. We've got an estimate based on some conversations that we had with Superintendent Evans. Hopefully that number will come in a little bit lower. So all in all, we felt like it was certainly a problem that we could work out. It's actually not as big a gap as I thought it was going to be. So that was a little bit of a relief for me. We're also starting to turn our attention now to the enterprise funds and starting developing those. The one that is the one that we're paying a lot of attention to is the fields. And just because of COVID, just some of the impacts to the rentals, and then also with this, what they call fall 2 season, the fall season in the spring, that is going to have some impacts as well. And then I also want to let the board know, because it is part of the budget, even though it is a little bit separate, it's actually time to look at renewing our cable contract. So, and that is part of one of our enterprise funds that is approved at town meeting. But we are going to need to start looking at that. I have a meeting with Bill August, who helped us with our last contract negotiation with Verizon and Comcast next week. And so hopefully I should have some more information about that at the next meeting.
Michael, I think, I appreciate and am glad that you and Jim have already started talking, and he's, open to the discussion of using 900,000 versus 1.4. Is it time to set up a tri-board meeting to sort of see where the committee members are from school committee and finance, and, have a broader discussion with all of us to see where people are at and what we need to do as a community?
I was thinking maybe the end of March originally, but after talking with Jim and us both understanding that really it's going to be hard to do anything until we have a better idea of what the state numbers are, that meeting would probably need to happen later during this year.
Okay.
To really, I think, have kind of the impact that we're talking about.
Okay.
Like, are you looking possibly mid-April or end of April or something like that?
Potentially. I think a lot of it just depends on the legislature and how they're going to be able to craft their budget, and how on schedule they'll be able to craft their budget.
So Madam Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we had talked the possibility of having a liaison meeting, but that may not be a wise thing to do if we don't know exactly the figures that we'll be getting from the state to bounce off the wall. Or do you think we should have a liaison meeting to prep, everybody together at one time?
I think right now let's leave, let's let Jim and Michael work on it, and then, maybe we do a liaison, just a smaller group, early April and then bring everyone together toward the end of April when we have some better understanding. And certainly, with pushing out town meeting until, second week in June, it does give us a little more time. So,
Okay.
okay.
Said a question for Michael, just kind of a big picture question here. So I got an announcement here from Catherine Clark's office that the House passed that national, I think they're calling it the American Rescue Plan. So in that is over 8.2 billion to the Commonwealth and local municipalities to keep first responders and providers of other vital services safely on the job. This is in her email release. So I think, in my opinion, I think this American Rescue Plan is likely to be passed by the Senate through the reconciliation process. So I guess my question is, what are town managers, are you guys in finance people, municipal finance people, starting to talk about this and what it might mean, and how does that fit into the process of, do you expect we'll hear about it through the state budget process? What should our expectations or hopes be for this?
Well, that's actually a really good question. It could prove very, very beneficial this year in closing any kind of gaps, or maybe even next year. It's hard to say exactly in what kind of form that's going to come. And, usually what happens in terms of Massachusetts in relation to federal aid is the state gets a big block of money that they distribute according to a formula that they prescribe. And then some of the larger cities, which are called entitlement communities, get their own direct share. So it could come in the form of that. I think we're cautiously optimistic. The other thing is we don't want to necessarily build a budget leaning heavily on COVID funds that will eventually disappear. But it could definitely help.
Because isn't there still CARES Act money that could come down from the state, but they haven't dispersed it all? So we're saying that it's great that there's this federal crazy large bill, but we don't know when we're going to see it. It could still be 2 years out before we see any of that money.
There's a graphic that somebody tweeted out today in relation to how municipalities and public health officials are managing with the ever-changing state and federal guidelines on public health and also the finances. I won't share it with you, at least.
Just imagine.
But it is frustrating.
Well, and I guess it's good we're pushing back town meeting, because time is our friend here in terms of knowing what we may or may not get. But there must be some understanding that we need to have answers, or it would be good to have these kind of answers so we can set our next fiscal year's budget. Unless we're, I guess, coming back.
Hold on. I'm going to get to you in a second, Steve. Considering last year, when was the state budget passed? And we went almost 6 months before we knew exactly what we were getting from the state budget. So I don't know that we can hang our hats on it completely.
I would say, Yolanda, in addition to Chapter 78 and local unrestricted aid that comes through the state budget, there are other aspects of the budget that impact our finances, and that did happen later in the fiscal year. But the legislature and the governor were pretty good about letting, given the circumstances, they gave us an idea of what that number was going to be. They said it was not going to be less. They were going to basically keep that the same. But at the point, that really didn't occur until, I think, July, before that happened. So
right before they told us that, and then the budget was November, December. So Steve, go ahead.
So I think just to add even more confusion to the equation, the headline on the State House News Service website right now reads, February tax haul shatters state's expectations. And the expectation is that this year's tax collections will be more than last year. So
Good
so
news.
how does that all fit in? I mean, it just gets, as you say, a little disconcerting how this, how this gets formulated and how that information travels down to, the communities, the cities and towns.
But it is
Yep.
generally positive information,
That's very
this-
positive information. I
Yeah,
would
that's
think
true.
that-
You don't want to lose sight of that.
I
Yeah.
would think they'd be in a position to, be able to formulate a budget in a timely fashion.
One would think.
Well, let's talk. I'm sure our senator would be helpful in that process. So.
We're all doing the best we can, I think,
Okay.
Thanks.
Anything else for your updates, Michael?
No, that's it for tonight.
Okay. Board reports. Brandy, why don't you start tonight?
Okay, thanks. So just a couple of things. One, I wanted to let folks know that the Corner Spot is planning to open up their shed this upcoming spring and summer season. Beth Reynolds is looking for businesses that want to pop up at the Corner Spot. And, I think that as things are opening up a little bit more, they're planning for some safe activities and safe potential business opportunities. So if folks are looking for a way that they can pop up at the Corner Spot, please reach out to Beth. And they're starting to fill up their calendar for the spring and upcoming summer. So exciting. It'll be good to have people back at the Corner Spot, even socially distanced and masked up. And I think it'll be good for the community, which will be good to see. And then the other thing, we talked about it a little bit, but I was on that MMA housing choice briefing that was held yesterday by the Baker administration. This was housing choice was signed by Baker in January, and really it's giving municipalities more control over and flexibility around creating more housing. So as we talked about, as it relates to 40R, it's really about having some very specific ways that zoning bylaws can be passed and changed to promote housing in municipalities. So going from a 2/3 majority at town meeting to a simple majority. So this is a way that as we talk about housing production and as we talk about affordable housing and this potential 40R development, this is all it's still evolving. They're still coming up with more guidance around what housing choice really means, and the state has given some resources. So if a town has a specific question about what would qualify for housing choice, there's sort of a process and a best practices that the state is helping towns with. So that's something that we can also leverage from the state. Also wanted to point out that one of the questions that came up was really interesting. It was talking about infrastructure support from the state and as it relates to housing choice. And one of the things that Secretary Keneally had mentioned was that as it relates to MassWorks grants, that the state gives preference to housing projects for MassWorks grants. So that's something that I don't know if that was something that was readily known, but I wanted to make sure that that Michael and Jen and Joe, as part of the Affordable Housing Trust, I think it's good information to know that that's something that's available.
Mm-hmm.
And I think,
Well, I think when Brandy, when we did our original MassWorks grant that helped us get the 3 million, it was because we knew we'd be adding housing to downtown.
oh, okay, that's
So.
good. And I think that's pretty much, I'm sure Rob will talk about it a little bit as well, but I was also on that Forging Ahead from the MBTA, and I'm sure Rob will talk more about it, but I just wanted to thank Rob for bringing that to our attention. It's, you know, as folks are starting to commute back into the city, the transportation issue, I think, is going to be a big issue for Metro West. So I'm sure Rob will talk more about it. So,
Well, thanks for bringing that up, Randy.
so thank you.
Okay, and Joe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First and foremost, personally, I just want to thank the entire town of Ashland, the residents, and for their support and prayers during this cardiac issue that I had over the past week and a half. They say that the power of prayer doesn't do much. Well, I have to tell you that no, it does. It does. It says an awful lot, and it does an awful lot, not only for the person that is looking for them, but also for their families as well. So thank you very much for everything that's come along my way and my family's way. It's been greatly appreciated. And just keep the minestrone soup coming, because that was it was very, very good. Thank you, Brandy. I greatly appreciate that.
Looks like a feed ya.
Yeah, that's the problem. I'm eating too much. The housing production plan that we have two representatives on the Affordable Housing Trust on that committee. We were very much aware of a lot of the zoning changes that have come up recently. We all attended a webinar from CHAPA, and all those discussions were brought up with respect to the change in vote with respect to the zoning. The only thing that we were concerned about, especially when it comes to 40R and friendly developments, was a mile, because we have a rail transit district in our town, and for anything to receive any additional funding through the feds, it was a mile, and we're shy about 3 clicks of a mile to get that additional funding if we were looking for it to help the housing project. And we were trying to see whether or not that distance could change, or make it a half mile type of deal, especially referring to the project that is being discussed right now on Main Street, DeLorean and Main Street. So that was one of the things I want to bring up. But that webinar was great. It's on their website if you wanted to watch it again. It's notes that I had from the 3 meetings that we attended, but it was well attended by everybody on the committee, and I look forward to working to get that whole project started again. One of the concerns that I have, and Yolanda, you brought it up, and I greatly appreciate you bringing it up, was we have a lot of properties that we bought, and for whatever reason, we didn't have a maintenance plan for those. And one of the ones that bothers me quite, that I hear from the residents in and around that area, is the Simpson barn that has completely collapsed. And is that not only is it an eyesore, but it's also dangerous. You have kids in that area that well, they like to walk around, they like to do different things and explore, as kids would normally do in the woods or whatever. And they come across this gaping hole with all these boards and everything that are in the cellar. We need to start looking at these properties and maybe securing them a little bit better, so kids don't get injured. That's one of the concerns that I have, and I just wanted to bring that up. And maybe it's something we should look at and making it an agenda item for down the road. But I agree. I think we need to really start looking at what we have for properties and prioritize what needs to be corrected or needs to be shored up in some way, shape, or form before someone gets hurt. Secondly, I would like to thank, and we have, everybody else individually did it, but Michael took some of my stuff, went out of my shelves for the things he discussed, so I won't repeat them. But Martin Ring and Rob St. Germain, 2 individuals who put their heart and soul into this town on many different committees. And I want to thank them very much for all the work and all the time away from their families as Diane said to us earlier today, it's not an easy thing when you become a public servant. The money's lousy, but at the same token, it's a sacrifice for those family members that don't see their loved ones. And it may be easier now because we're doing virtual and we're home. But when you're going to meeting, when we're alive, it takes a lot of time away from individuals and their families. So again, it's a lot of sacrifice, and I want to thank them both for all their hard work and diligent work and making Ashland a better place. A lot of people love to sit back and Monday morning quarterback and throw out this jab, that jab, and everything else, and don't do anything to make the town a better place other than just being Mr. Negative or Mrs. Negative all the time. That's all they do, because they must get some sort of enjoyment out of it. But it's really not enjoyment for those of us that are trying to do our best. I'm looking at this pencil. Oh, guess what? There's an eraser on it. That's because I'm not perfect. So be it as it may. All right, I'm off my soapbox now for the night. But and I hope you all have an understanding of who I was referring to and what I was referring to. So be it as it may, it's kind of frosty out, and the midnight train to Georgia is going to be taking off pretty soon. So I just want to say thank you to everybody, and I thank all of you on the board for doing what you do. It's not an easy task, but it's something that we love, or we wouldn't be doing.
Yeah. So Joe, I have to say that when you're your cranky Joe, you know you're doing good. So that's
We know you're feeling better.
Wait till next week.
right? So
Wait till after next week is over.
Back.
We'll talk about being cranky. But so thank you all very much. I appreciate that. And Jen, well, all her hard work with the public safety building, and I thought the hard work was behind us. It's right ahead of us right now.
It's just beginning.
It's just beginning. Absolutely.
I mean, come on, the construction's the hard part.
Yeah.
Okay, Joe, are you all set? If
I'm
not,
all
I'm going to
set,
cut you off anyway.
No,
Steve?
I'm all set.
Steve, go ahead.
all right. So I just want to also agree with Joe on
which part?
Being cranky?
Being cranky.
I'm going to get there on acknowledging certainly Marty and Rob for all of their work and their passion, for their projects, but also for the town. So thank you very much. And I know that they're not going away, and I'm sure we'll always be able to use them as a resource going forward. So.
Yeah, Steve, just on that point, Rob St. Germain has already said he's willing to work with you on revising the stormwater fees. So just so that you know,
we can
let
keep
me know.
blaming him for it then. Okay.
Well, we had some fun going back and forth on that one, but so that I just wanted to make note that next Wednesday, the 10th, the Metro West YMCA always has an annual breakfast, and many of us have attended over the years, typically at the Warrant Center. And of course, we're in Zoom now, so they are doing a 6:45 start on Wednesday, the 10th. And it's Metro West YMCA annual community breakfast, and then in parentheses, dinner. So it'll be, if you haven't register. It's always a good event, and and make a donation too. So that's the whole premise.
Yeah, it's free to register, and then they're raising funds for the Y and for the programs that they do. But it's always a great event.
We're partners with the Y, obviously, with their decision to locate in Ashland. So it's a great organization. And then lastly, really just to extend best wishes to our first responders, our frontline healthcare workers and nurses, our town staff, and our teachers and administrators. So have a good 2 weeks until we meet again on Zoom.
Sure.
Okay, Rob?
Yeah. Marty and Rob, but you guys already said it. So thank you, and also want to thank them, and I'm sure we'll see more of them. I wanted to note that Chris Danielle is decided not to run for re-election to the Board of Health. And, I think we all know Chris. He's a very steady person. He's getting very busy at Mass Bay, and he's doing COVID-related work, and he's just, at the moment, his time is limited. So he's made that decision, and I wanted to thank him. And, he brought a very good, we all remember kind of the issues with the Board of Health a few years ago, and Chris was a steady presence and helped bring stability to that board. So I wanted to thank him for his work and recognize that. In terms of Brandy and the Forging Ahead initiative, it was a couple of takeaways from that. This was the information session that the T put on to discuss their reductions in service over the next few months. And we were, of course, interested in the commuter rail aspect of that. I don't think my impression is that our schedule has not taken a huge hit because we're still moving pretty regularly. I think it'll still be like 10 trains a day. But what they're looking at, which I thought was really interesting, and there was two things that I thought were important in that meeting. They talked about, and if I got the term right, they called the schedule car facing. And what I think they mean by that is that what the commuter rail guy talked about, this is a new concept to me, was, we're not going to we may not be running trains as frequently, but we're going to pivot a bit away from the, in the morning, they all go east to Boston, and at night they all come west at the end of the day to deliver Boston commuters. They're looking at people who may want to use the train during the day to go to events or meetings, and moving a bit away from the just total commuter oriented to kind of adapt and pivot a bit to, there's a train coming regularly. It's 11 in the morning, but there'll be one here, and you can take it in to go to some event and then come back at 1 o'clock. And, there'll be a steady, more regularly scheduled during the day train. So I thought that was an interesting concept. I'm not sure if it'll work. I'd be realistic. I think we all kind of are not sure what's going to happen with commuter rail and mass transit over the next few years. And that led to my second comment, that I did make a comment that, as officials, as public officials ourselves, we want to know what kind of services our community needs. And I'm not sure we know at this point. And Brandy, you may have a better feeling for me about what the traditional Boston commuters are feeling right now and when they may be coming back. But one of the things I suggested is that we would be interested in municipalities in working with the T to survey riders and, try to get an idea of what's happening for the future in commuter rail, which I think is a bit of an unknown right now, and that they're grappling with that themselves at the T. So that was my major takeaway from the Forging Ahead.
The only thing I agree, I completely agree with you, Rob. I think that the thing that concerns me is I took a look at the current commuter rail schedule just because, from a personal standpoint, I probably won't be commuting back into Boston on a regular basis until the fall. But, right now they're planning to come out with a new schedule in April for 6 months. And it's already pretty reduced. If you look at times for commuters, it's already a pretty reduced schedule.
Yeah.
I think they were talking about reducing it by another 20%, I think is kind of what they were looking at. And the commuter rail.
I didn't actually see many, and this is where you're probably in better position. I didn't analyze the entire schedule, but it didn't look a heck of a lot different. Just times moving around, but
So it'll be interesting to see. I haven't talked to a lot of people that are currently using the commuter rail. I think most people are still, the majority of folks are still pretty much in a work from home environment. But I think that as people get vaccinated, I think companies will be shifting back to wanting workers at least back in the office, at least in some capacity. And the commuter rail will need to adjust. And I'm hoping that they do adjust, because I didn't get a great sense from them that they would really look to add more trains and capacity for another, at least another 6 months.
Well, I think, and I think that there was a commitment to constantly evaluating things, which I think is good. There was also a commitment to equity in terms of, and they talked about with the buses and the subways, they analyzing who's using the system still. And it's not us affluent suburbanites because we're people with options. It's low income people without cars, and that really are dependent on mass transit. And that's where they're putting their emphasis. And as part of that, they're looking at commuter rail and who's using it and who really needs it and doesn't have as many options, and trying to make a safe and effective transportation system for them. And that's why I think they're ending up looking more towards, they're preserving a lot of weekend service and late night service, with the idea that essential workers and people need this throughout the day and into the night, even if they're not as many trains in the traditional rush hour time period. At least that's the concepts that they're talking.
Well, I also think, Rob, as companies look to bring employees back, it may not be the traditional working hours, right? You may have, almost shift people, so that some people are coming in at one point, some people come in a little bit later. And to Brandy's point, I think a lot of these companies are going to realize that they don't need to have their workers in every day, that they can still be productive. They're still meeting, they're still doing their group projects without being in office space.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah.
So
thank you.
anything
So
else?
my final, so I think we're all getting those emails from Cece Doucette. I think we all know her. She's been a leader in the features of in the field of the potential dangers of Wi-Fi radiation. And I'm just wondering, she's asked us to come in and make a presentation. And I understand that, we may be faced or are faced with 5G Wi-Fi and potential issues. And can we get her in here on the agenda and do her presentation? I'd be looking forward to that. Maybe next meeting, can we get her in? And I'd like to know if we really have some issues we have to be concerned with, and what the regulatory situation may be with this. So.
Yeah, I think, Rob, that's something maybe you should maybe pursue offline. I'm not quite sure. I have a number of concerns about not about the person. I have concerns about the way the science, supposed science, is being represented. So I would prefer that we not spend our time.
Well, I think it's
that, by all means, go and pursue that. And if you think it's important enough to mention it in board reports, I think that's.
Well, but I think we may be faced with the regulatory choices. I'm not sure I'm competent to present the kind of information that Cece's been working on for years.
But if there's a regulatory issue, I think that we would be getting a guidance from council on that.
Well, then let's get, I think but I think it's something we should discuss. And of course, people should feel free to question it or say, well, this is where we should go. But I think she's offered to make this presentation. I think we ought to take her up on it. I mean, we could, people can have reservations. And
I don't think we'll be able to do it the next meeting. Certainly if we're bringing the Valentine, the Valentine committee and the stuff with Dave, and, we can look at, I think it might be good to touch base with town council to see where things are at with the new regulations, or what's going on with that, and then determine if we want to bring CC in.
The only thing I would say to that is she might say that our town council may or may not be aware of something and have something that she would want us to take the initiative on. I don't know, but I don't know if we need to have the town council do. I just want to hear what she has to say and then evaluate what we should do or not do. Maybe it'll be bring in the other side to say there's no issues with Wi-Fi radiation. I don't know.
I can only speak for myself. I would prefer not to spend our time on a presentation like that. I have seen presentations. I'm aware of it.
Sure.
So that's my particular prejudice or bias.
She also just recently went in front of the planning board and did her presentation in front of the planning board as well. So, I don't know necessarily if it's a good use of our time, but, certainly we should talk to town council and see see if there's things that we should be aware of. But I, like I said, I know she recently went in front of planning board and
Randy, do you know which meeting of the planning boards that if Rob wants to go watch her presentation there, and then if we want to,
It was last planning board meeting, I think.
Okay.
the last one or the one before, it was really recent.
Right.
Yeah.
And
But
she also presented at the Board of Health.
be aware, ZBA is our regulatory board relative to cell towers. So I would think if you're going to make a presentation, you'd make it to ZBA.
Well, maybe that could be our advice, but I think we're the leaders of this community. So if there's real issues here, I think we'd want to know it and not, you know.
and
that would
I
just be
think, Rob,
my-
that's part of what Steve is saying, right? Is that he doesn't know if there are real issues.
Yeah, which is fine, but I guess I didn't realize our time was that. I mean, we have all sorts of presentations for all sorts of reasons. I think 20 minutes we can spare.
Well, part of my position, Rob, is questioning credentials as well as science. And, we've gone through the last 4 years of listening to an administration that, really disputed scientific fact and so on. So that's part of my concerns about this.
Sure.
This
Well, see, I would suggest that we're having a discussion now that we could have at this presentation. I would, the school
so
did
Rob,
adopt her recommendations years ago as best practice. So there is backup for it. I'm just not saying I'm competent to make that case. I just want to hear it.
So Rob, I would say is go watch her presentation at the planning board. I will have, direct Michael, or I will reach out to town council and ask her what she's hearing. And then if we determine that it makes sense for us to have a further discussion, then we can look at that. But it will not be at the next it will not be at our next meeting.
Okay.
And then we can go
Well,
from there.
I
Okay.
would just urge us to do that. Okay. That's it for me. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Couple things. I had a couple of meetings this past week and a half. I was at Metro West Regional Collaborative meeting. So that is, 9 cities and towns that work together with MAPC. We are looking at a clean energy, some kind of regional plan for clean energy. Is there something that we are working on, or so just letting you know that we're looking at that. Also,
Can I just say, sorry to interrupt you a lot. MAPC
okay.
has been very active in this whole clean energy and climate, kudos to them and all the work that's happened there. So,
well, it's a big, that's okay. It's a big part of their Metro Commons 2050.
Very impressive.
Working toward the net zero and clean energy and things by 2050. So that's a big part of that. And then MVP plans, they're looking at capital projects, and Michael, I'll touch base with you as to where our update is on our MVP plan, because again, there might be some either regional procurement or something that we can be doing to work with the towns around us. Then I was at the MAPC Winter Council meeting to review, and they had some technical difficulties, so that was interesting, but there was like 170 of us on a Zoom meeting for that. Yeah. Then MMA policy meeting, so I'm on the municipal and regional administration one. They gave us some information. So remote town meeting, the House and Senate are looking at how we can do that. They do want to allow to, they're going to look at extending and putting into permanent place for at least remote, for not remote, for not open town meeting, but for representative town meeting, so that some of the emergency laws that were put in place by the legislature last summer are things that could be put in place in the future. They're also looking at the remote participation law. So right now your quorum has to be sitting at the table if you have some people remote, and they're looking at what they can do to change that remote participation law, so that if we did decide to do remote participation, if 2 or 3 of us feel we want to be sitting at the select board meeting, but 3 of us did not, that the quorum didn't have to be sitting at the meeting. So that's stuff that's being looked at. They're also looking at some procurement laws in regards to some of the jobs and things for the procurement officers. So Jen, something you may want to be aware of with the legislature, that they're looking at making some changes.
Oh, hopefully the threshold
can't-
is increased.
I think they're looking at some of that.
Oh, happy.
Yeah, that would be nice. And I think that's it. Those are the only meetings that I had. But like Michael said, the event happening for Ashland is United this Sunday, March 7th. And as the Y event that Steve talked about, I don't know if I'll be doing the Ashland is United, I hope to, but I'm definitely doing the YMCA one. And that is it. It's been a long couple of weeks. There's still the availability if you want to run. As Rob said, Chris Daniele is not running for re-election, so his Board of Health seat is wide open. I know Barbara, who we've appointed to the rest of the term on the Board of Health, has pulled her papers. There are now 3 people who have pulled papers for school committee. There's a new person running there, which will be good because school committee often does not have contested seats, so it's good to get some new blood there. And I believe that is it. If there is nothing else, I would be looking for a motion to adjourn.
So
Hey,
moved.
Brandy.
I got a so moved and a second.
Second.
Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right.
Thank you all for watching, board. Thank you for your work and participation. Michael and Jen, thank you for your work. Susan as well. To everybody, stay safe, wear your mask, get your vaccine when you can. Some of us have to wait a little bit longer, but be safe, and we will see you all in 2 weeks if we don't get to see you before.